Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here talking about Dorian. I'm sorry I didn't upload yesterday. I've had a busy school week, so hopefully this video sort of encompasses everything that I missed. There's not too much to cover that I missed, but we'll detail all that in this video. So first off, we look at the National Hurricane Center. Dorian, as of 5 p.m. Eastern, moving west-northwest at 9 miles per hour. Minimum pressure of 970 millibars, which is getting rather low, which is why it's a Category 3 storm at the moment, and max sustained winds of 115 miles per hour. Now, that's what it is. I mean, the storm is moving rather slowly. It's going to continue to slow as it makes a leftward turn, as you can see here. And you'll notice here, the winds don't extend out very far. These hurricane force winds are very close to the center. It's a very compact storm, but the tropical storm force winds go out much farther. That's usually what happens to these systems, and the wind field will probably expand even more as it gets some more land interaction. As you can see now, the cone is shifted from where it was. Just the other day it was more over the central part of Florida with this black line, but now it's more eastern Florida, and I'll show you why here. This is the GFS model, and as you can see, it has Dorian coming to the coast. And change my model run here. 18Z GFS doesn't go out as far as the 12Z, so we're going to flip to that. You see, it gets to the coast a little bit farther north than it was this morning. But then it hits about Cocoa Beach. Cocoa Beach is where the GFS is saying. We'll show you the euro in a second. And then it makes this turn to the north without really weakening too much. And that's because of its proximity to the warm Atlantic water that's sitting there. This turn is due to this high pressure that you see here. Let me pull up my pen. But it's due to this high pressure that's sitting up here. And that high pressure is going to dictate where this storm goes. Really, if this high pressure here sort of moves off that direction, that's what's allowing the storm to take more of that northerly track. In the past, it had this high pressure, let me switch to blue because that's the color high pressure is in, sort of build a ridge, which is just a dip in where the high pressure is. It's called a ridge there that sort of forced the storm more that way before turning north. But now they're expecting this high pressure to sort of move off this way, weaken, that will allowing the storm to do that. And the reason the high pressure is causing the storm to move to the west is because around high pressure systems you have winds that are going clockwise. Low pressure systems have winds that go counterclockwise. So that's why in hurricanes the winds go around that way. Now, the steering wind for this hurricane is up in the air around this high pressure system here, and the wind is coming like this. It's coming down around and steering it like that, and that's why the storm's taking that odd westerly turn that we don't usually see out of hurricanes heading towards the Florida coast. Now, like I said, this is weakening, so the reason it's going to make more of a northerly turn is due to that moving away, and the winds being now more, rather than from the east, from the southeast, which turns the storm more to that direction. Where it's going to be when it gets close to land is anybody's guess. I mean, the cone, I kid you not, is this big once it gets out to this point. It could be anywhere in that point when it hits land. A few days ago, staying off the coast was, a very negligible probability, but now it's a fairly decent probability that it just stays off the coast. That's not out of the question. Although I think the main track is it's going to come up here and ride like that, which unfortunately is the worst case scenario with this, because you're getting a storm that's not really weakening, moving up the coast. It's going to ravage the coastal areas if that happens. But the winds, if we take a look at the winds here, let me switch back to mouse. We look at 10-meter winds. We're getting knots of, some extremely strong wind there. 140 miles per hour that would be up in the atmosphere, off the ground, you're still getting 120, 110, gusting higher. This type of wind is what's going to really, cause the damage, and it's going to be a very, very slow moving storm. Between this point here, when it makes landfall here, why is that so big? Did not mean for that to happen. I don't know what happened there. Let me try that again. Why is it so big all of a sudden? Let me try to fix that. Where's my settings? Sorry about this, folks. I didn't mean for this to, settings. Okay. Let's try. That's a little better. We can work with that. How do we do that? From this point here, let me use a different color. You can't really see blue. From this point here to here, it's going to be almost 24 hours. 24 hours that storm's just sitting there dumping rain in areas all across the Florida Peninsula. And that's going to be the main threat, is because when you have that amount of rain and flooding, you don't need as high winds to take down trees on power lines, and just to really cause more damage than what you would typically find. Now, if we flip over to the European model, the European model has a different sort of outlook for the storm. Surprisingly, the European, let me switch over to pressure. So this is the pressure and wind. And as you see, the European model, site's very slow today. There's a lot of people on it right now. Has it staying off the coast, which almost mirrors what happened with Hurricane Matthew a few years ago, which would be the best case scenario, because if it stays off the coast, you're going to get very minimal effects over here, because once that happens, the storms are very loaded on this side. I mean, most of the rain and wind is going to be over here rather than over here, because land creates friction, which ends up hurting the wind speeds in hurricanes and kills all the rain bands and such. So what the European model is showing now is really the best case scenario. If it could stay off the coast and then, really, even if it just hugs the coast and then moves out, that spares a lot of people flooding, wind. There's still going to be some flooding. You're going to have a lot of wind pushing. The storm surge is still going to be massive with that, because it's a very strong storm. Even if it stays off the coast, coastal areas are still going to be heavily affected. But for inland areas, it saves a lot if it stays off the coast. Now, the GFS, however, you look at the GFS model, and having it come up the coast here is not ideal, because then you have the strongest part of the hurricane moving right over the coastal area and even farther inland. So, as I said, this storm's been moving very slowly. I mean, from here to here, it's going to be almost 36 hours at that point, and you're still going to be getting all the rain. I can show you that if I flip back over to the GFS. Unfortunately, the European model doesn't show, at least on here, precipitation, because it's not free data. This is the only free data they give out. So we look at the GFS, and I flip over to precipitation. You see, just watch how much rain. Let me flip over to the 12Z run. Just rain upon rain, and this is across. Let's see, it starts raining at this time. That's 6 hours, 12 hours, 18 hours, 24, 30, 36, 42, 48. You get my point. It's just rain and rain and rain with this. 54. This thing is going to be moving so slowly, because once this high pressure moves away, those steering winds that are causing the storm to move that way also die down. And then there's nothing over here to really steer the storm either. So it's going to crawl along wherever it wants to go. There's some slight effects from those steering winds, not as strong as they were as the high pressure moves off to the east. Now, like I said, this is going to bring torrential rainfall to the Florida Peninsula if this current track holds up. With the GFS to Euro, not as much, but still a decent amount of rain. If I go over the accumulated rainfall rates, I mean, this is going to be astounding to look at, really. Let me just go in advance here, let it load. I mean, you're looking here, most of the rain stay off the coast still, but you're still seeing numbers of 24 inches of rain just inland, 5-6 inches of rain in areas that have already been soaked for the last few weeks with rain from low pressure systems moving over the Gulf, dropping a lot of rain in Florida already. So it's not going to take a lot of rain to re-flood these areas, not to mention the storm surge backing up the St. Johns River and other places along the coast. It's just going to add to that flooding. During Irma, we didn't have a lot of wind from Irma as a whole because the storm came from down here. Why does this keep doing this? The storm came from down here. It came all the way down here and stayed pretty far to the west. So we were getting winds, but not these strongest winds. And that still flooded Jacksonville worse than it's ever been flooded. And I think if this holds up, the coastline here is just going to be ravaged by storm surge. This is going to be a Category 4 storm. I don't mean to sound, like I'm overhyping the system. This is a Category 4 hurricane that they're projecting. Even if it stays 50 miles off the coast, the amount of water that's going to be with that over the ocean being pushed is going to be substantial. And especially on the coastal areas, even if this stays off the coast, if this stays, off the coast, by 50 miles, you still need to evacuate. If people tell you to go or there's a voluntary evacuation, go. Because, quite frankly, Duval County has never had a hurricane make landfall in Duval County, and this one won't either. But my point is, I can't tell you the last time we had an extremely strong hurricane like this come this close to Jacksonville. Granted, it will weaken some before it gets to Jacksonville if it takes the GFS course. If it takes the European course, not as much. That'll keep it stronger. So the wind speeds will be higher, but they'll be off the coast. Now, that will still drive a lot of water, however. So, depending on where this thing goes, that's going to really dictate how our wind speeds are. Now, as I was saying, Jacksonville hasn't seen a system like this. I mean, I'm just going to be frank about it. Jacksonville has not seen a system like this. Even if it's weaker, Category 1, Category 2 coming over Jacksonville, it's still going to be a lot of flooding, wind. I know, simply just from experience with Hurricane Irma, even though it was farther away, that was the strongest winds I can remember in Jacksonville. At least in Middleburg where we live. That's the strongest I can remember. And the storm was 100 miles to our west. So if this thing comes, even closer and stronger, because Irma was a tropical storm by the time it reached Jacksonville. If this thing's a Category 2, Category 1 by the time it reaches Jacksonville and is closer, the effects are going to be that much more. Like I said, if you're told to evacuate, leave. Get supplies ready now, that way you're not, rushing. I already know some places in Jacksonville are running low, especially in South Florida. I'm sure the interstates are bad, but leave. You'd rather be safe than sorry with this sort of system. And like I said, I don't mean to sound, like I'm overhyping this or fear-mongering in any way. It's just, this is an extremely powerful system coming very close to you. And you want to keep a lookout for that, because who's to say you don't flood? Who's to say you don't get a tornado spin up? Who's to say the winds by themselves or storm surge don't get you? And that's another thing I need to mention is tornadoes. With tropical systems, especially very powerful tropical systems, there are going to be tornadoes. That's not even a question. There will be tornadoes with this. Now, depending on where this thing goes again, if it follows the Euro track and tracks more like that, there's going to be less. Because tornadoes like to hang out in this sector of the storm, the northeastern quadrant. It's more conducive to spin in the atmosphere. However, if it comes more like this, guess where that puts Jacksonville? In that northeastern quadrant. Now, and another thing is that puts you closer to the eye wall, which, like I said, that's going to be where the higher winds are. So, there's a lot of threats with this. Nothing's still set in stone. Like I said, the cone area is still very large, has the entire Florida peninsula. However, the models are more in agreement on location in this area. That area there is where I expect the storm to be, anywhere in there. And you're going to get effects. You're going to get rain, you're going to get wind. How strong the wind, how much rain, how many tornadoes is all dependent on whether it tracks inland or off the coast. And with that, nobody is certain. These things can do whatever they want. If this ridge is stronger and stays a little bit stronger, it's going to go more inland. If it's weaker, it's going to go more off the coast. That's just how the atmosphere works. Unfortunately, we can't predict that. The ridge has already been weaker than what we expected a few days ago. So, if that trend continues, it's more likely that it will stay off the coast. However, as we've seen with hurricanes in the past, things can come up, things can change. Ruling it going completely over the coast and up into the panhandle is not out of the question. What I'm trying to say with this is, we're not certain what this is going to do yet. All we are certain of is it's going to be very powerful, very dangerous. So you need to take your precautions now, getting supplies, generator, fuel, water, non-perishable food, getting preparation for your pets, boarding up windows, sandbags, things of that nature. And if you're told to evacuate, please evacuate. Trust your local officials to know what's best for you. They're collaborating with the local forecast office for the National Weather Service and the National Hurricane Center. You don't know better than them. There's a reason they're asking you to leave. Even if it's a voluntary evacuation, they know what's best for you based on the geography of the area and the strength of the storm. Don't think that, oh, this is just another system. I know in Jacksonville we've been very lucky with storms not hitting our area or being weak when they hit us or just barely missing us. You don't want to take the risk with this. You really don't. You saw what Hurricane Michael did to Mexico Beach, not Mexico Beach, the Panhandle, just as a whole, Panhandle. You saw what Irma did to southern Florida. And what if this system comes ashore, the effects will be similar. There will be a lot of damage. There could possibly be lives lost. Just take your precautions and make sure you're not one of them.